Welcome to the Global WarWatch Network. Hey, before we jump in, if you want to stay ahead of developing global conflicts, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss a thing. So, you've got this incredibly tense situation. In the middle of a war, under a shaky ceasefire, US and Iranian negotiators sit down for these massive, high-stakes talks. The whole thing hinges on Iran's nuclear program. The US is demanding a 2-decade-long pause on all uranium enrichment. But Tehran, they're saying their nuclear rights are absolutely non-negotiable. So the big question is this the exact point where it all falls apart? All right, so what exactly went down? Well, after 21 grueling hours of marathon talks in Islamabad, Pakistan, it was over. The talks, which were the most direct conversation these two countries have had in more than a decade, ended with no deal. And the message coming out of the US side was, well, it was blunt. The head of the American delegation, Vice President J.D. Vance, didn't mince words on his way out. He made it crystal clear that the US had laid out its terms and Iran just wasn't willing to accept them. The message couldn't have been more obvious. That diplomatic window was slamming shut. And the response was immediate, and it was forceful. With those talks collapsing, President Trump ordered a full naval blockade of all Iranian ports. So yeah, the failure of diplomacy didn't just stall things, it actually triggered a major military escalation. But you have to wonder, why did these talks fail so spectacularly? To really get that, we need to back up a little bit and look at how we even got here. You see, these Islamabad negotiations didn't just happen in a vacuum. They were a pretty desperate diplomatic gamble right in the middle of a hot war. Let's just look at the timeline. The war, which the U.S. codenamed Operation Epic Fury, kicked off back on February 28th. After 40 days of sustained combat, a really fragile 2-week ceasefire was declared on April 7th, just to open the door for diplomacy. And just 4 days later, the delegations are meeting in Islamabad. I mean, the clock was literally ticking from the moment they sat down. This image here really captures the intense military reality that was hanging over those talks. This wasn't some theoretical conflict. Operation Epic Fury involved thousands of strikes by the US and Israel, hitting everything from military installations to what was left of Iran's nuclear program. That kind of military pressure was the context for every single word spoken in Islamabad. So let's get to the crucial point. Why specifically did the negotiations fall apart? It really just boiled down to a fundamental clash of red lines, of non-negotiable demands from both sides. This slide lays it out perfectly. The U.S. demanded a 20-year halt to uranium enrichment, the physical removal of Iran's existing stockpile of highly enriched uranium, and guaranteed freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's counteroffer wasn't even in the same ballpark. They proposed a 5-year pause, offered only to downblend their stockpile, which, by the way, is a reversible process, and insisted on maintaining sovereignty over the strait. The gap was just immense. Let's just focus on that first point for a second. 20 years. The United States was demanding a 2-decade-long moratorium. That's 2 full decades without any uranium enrichment. In Iran's counteroffer, just 5 years. This one comparison shows you just how far apart the two sides were. There was pretty much no middle ground on the most critical issue. So let's move on to the immediate consequence of this failure. With diplomacy off the table, the focus shifted from the negotiating room right back to the seas, and specifically to the Strait of Hormuz. At 10 a.m. Eastern Time on April 13th, the U.S. blockade went into effect. The rules are pretty clear. It targets all vessels from all nations going to or from Iranian ports. It's being enforced by more than 15 U.S. warships from CENTCOM, which is the U.S. Central Command for the Middle East. And crucially, CENTCOM stated it would not stop neutral traffic going to non-Iranian ports, and it would allow humanitarian aid through, but only after an inspection. Iran's response was swift and it was defiant. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps' Navy issued this stark warning, framing the strait as their most powerful bargaining chip. They threatened that any miscalculation by the U.S. would trap them in deadly whirlpools. That language is a very clear signal that they are prepared for a naval confrontation. So this brings us to the critical question: what happens now? With the ceasefire set to expire and military forces on high alert, the entire region is just holding its breath. But, behind the scenes, there is this subtle shift in language that's worth noting. Officials are increasingly calling the negotiations not the Islamabad talks, but the Islamabad process. That suggests there's an effort to frame this not as a final failure, but as maybe the first step in an ongoing diplomatic track. It's keeping a tiny sliver of hope alive for a second round. But let's be honest, that hope is fading, and it is fading fast. The ceasefire expires in a matter of days. Diplomacy failed to bridge the gap. A naval blockade is in effect, and both sides are issuing threats. So the final question we're all left with is a stark one. Is a return to all-out war now inevitable? We are going to continue to monitor this situation as it develops. Thank you so much for your time and for joining us for this explainer. If you found this analysis valuable, please like, share, and subscribe to the Global WarWatch Network. Let us know what you think in the comments and come join us on social media for all the latest updates. The links for all that are right in the description below.